Little Hand's Big Attitude, Book 1, Chapter 15. What's past has passed. The outage, fortunately, was not as severe as before, only going out a few miles away, and by looking at the outage map, Tom was able to figure out where the center of the circle was, on the edges of the lake. Sonic wasn't a swimmer, which meant he needed to hurry. Tom drove down to the docks, putting the truck into park, and hurrying out of it to look around the edge of the lake. Sonic would be bright blue in comparison to the grays and browns of the landscape, so he figured he would be able to see him pretty well. He looked out over the area, which was quiet and tranquil for the time being.
Sonic!
He called, looking for any signs of Blue.
Sonic!
He wandered down the slope a little bit, but then he saw something moving in the reeds over by the edge of water. He heard a soft murmur, and then saw blue quills peek out of the grass. He scrambled down to the edge of the water, not worrying about getting his feet wet, as he saw his middle son lying in a clump of reeds and grass that appeared to have been crushed down, either by him crawling ashore or something dragging him there. His gloves and shoes were missing, and he was trembling, his fur sticking out in all directions like it had been wet and then dried funny.
Are you okay? What are you doing out?
Sonic's head snapped up and he saw Tom.
Dad?
He whimpered, tears staining his face and his eyes red from crying. And the next thing Tom knew, Sonic was in his lap, clinging to his coat for dear life.
Dad? Dad?
He wailed, and Tom immediately knew that answers could wait. Sonic needed comfort right now. He wrapped his arms tightly around the hedgehog and held on to him.
Shh. It's okay. It's okay.
He whispered, trying his best to calm the teenager down.
You're all right. I've got you. Whatever happened, it's over now. Okay? Just breathe. You're all right.
Don't leave me, don't leave. Please don't leave.
I won't, I promise. Just take deep breaths, okay? You're all right.
He stroked the hedgehog's head.
Shh. Do you know how he got out here?
The hedgehog shook his head as he shoved his face into Tom's shoulder.
Okay, just relax.
They sat there in the muck and water for several moments until Sonic's breathing had eased and his body relaxed.
That's it. Are you hurt?
Sonic shook his head.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Do you know what happened?
You were all. They took you from me. I thought it was real. I thought you were. And I was.
Shh. You had a nightmare, and then you woke up out here?
Sonic nodded.
Okay. It was just a nightmare. We're all okay, alright? It's okay. You wanna go home?
Sonic nodded and Tom let go of the hedgehog, shifting his grasp on him to holding his hand, and they walked back up the hill to the road, where Tom helped Sonic up into the truck, and then got in on the other side.
Here you go, bud.
He pulled out a blanket from behind the seats and handed it to Sonic, who wrapped it around his shoulders and arms. The hedgehog sniffled, wiping his nose on the blanket and not speaking. Knuckles having a kidney stone was not preferable, but not much could be done about that. Sonic possibly sleepwalking and having a nightmare so frightening that he took out the power to half the town? That was something they needed to get to the bottom of. Sonic didn't talk for the entire ride home, and then trudged up the driveway, one foot after the other.
There we are, bud.
Tom murmured as he turned the knob. Maddie had never looked so relieved as when the door opened and her husband came walking in, with their son wandering in front of him.
Sonic!
She got up from the floor and rushed to Sonic, grasping his arms gently.
Are you okay? Are you hurt, sweetie?
Sonic looked up at her with weary eyes and then wrapped his arms around her neck in a tight hug.
No, I'm not okay.
Oh, sweetheart. And I'll be alright. I'm right here. What happened?
I think he was sleepwalking.
Tom murmured as he bent down and stroked the hedgehog's back.
He mentioned a nightmare.
Tails hurried over from the table where he'd been eating his cereal and over to his older brother.
You had a nightmare, Sonic?
Sonic nodded.
The Echidnas, they killed all you and took Abe. I tried to save you, but
Shh. It was just a dream, Sonic.
Knuckles grunted as he sat up on the couch, fetching Sonic's attention.
Was I among your attackers?
Sonic shook his head.
they killed you too, and Longclaw.
I think we need to tell our respective workplaces we'll be taking another day off. We need a day just to recover, to sleep.
Sonic shook his head. Following the early morning panic and everything the day before, the Wachowskis all just went back to bed. Even Obsidian seemed to have no trouble returning to his cradle, curling up and sleeping for another couple of hours. Following a quick shower to rid him of any dirt or bugs in his fur, Tails offered Sonic a place on his bed, and the hedgehog gladly took it, snuggling into his younger brother's warmth, comforting embrace. He had a rough night, and just being close to his brother seemed to help him fall into a deep, restful sleep. When he woke up, it was nearly noon, and Tails was sitting up with a book.
Tails,
Hi, I didn't want to wake you up by leaving until you were ready.
Sonic sat up and rubbed his eyes.
I wish I knew what happened. I was in bed, and then,
He pulled his knees up to his chin, wrapping his arms around them.
there was that horrible nightmare.
Tails wrapped his arms around him.
It was just a dream, Sonic. I know they're scary, but that's why we're all here. To help you get through your fears.
That's what I said to you during the last thunderstorm.
Uh-huh. Funny how that works.
Thanks, Tails.
The pair got up from the bed and wandered downstairs, finding Knuckles off the couch and limping across from the kitchen.
How are you feeling, Knuckles?
Quite sore, but it's only due to the internal damage the stone caused. It will heal and I will be back to my regular training shortly.
Knuckles admitted, holding a steaming hot pocket on a plate.
Good. I'm glad you're feeling better.
And what about you?
Knuckles sat down on the couch again with a wince, and then patted for Sonic to take a seat on the couch beside him.
I wish to hear more of this nightmare you suffered.
Sonic sat down beside him, ears drooping a bit.
I don't know if you want to hear it, Knuckles.
The Echidna nodded firmly.
I do.
Sonic leaned back on the couch, closing his eyes. He didn't want to remember the details, but they came back to him all the same.
I was running through some woods in the dark. I knew that you guys were in trouble and I was trying to get back to you, but it was too late. Mom and Dad were gone, Tails too. And you were still in it, but not for much longer. You told me that they took something and I didn't see Obsidian, so I figured it was him, but...
He paused for a moment, swallowing hard.
And then the other Echidnas appeared. They had Longclaw too. I was all alone again because I'm sorry I can't.
It's alright. I am sorry that the attack my trap conducted on you and your guardian has left you so frightened.
We didn't know, Knuckles. Just two pawns in a war we never asked for sometimes. Sometimes I wonder what my birth mom, what she looked like, what happened to her. All I remember was Longclaw and them being here alone
And then having a family again.
Sonic smiled, pulling the fox up onto the couch with them.
exactly, little bro.
What's past has passed. We must instead look to the future and make a vow to live better than our ancestors did.
Powerbound!
Tails announced, and they all pounded fists together, followed by a tiny fourth fist.
Huh?
They looked down at Knuckles' lap, finding Obsidian settled there with an excited grin.
How long has he been there?
Knuckles seemed just as puzzled, but in a much more pleasant manner.
I haven't the slightest idea,
He announced, scooping the little hedgehog up into his arm and holding him up.
but his power bumps are just as important.
Obsidian grinned, and his eyes flickered purple.
It had been entirely by accident, but I couldn't be happier. The bolts of electricity that closed off of Sonic and Knuckles when they grew angry or stressed were not something I had seen much of in my time as a deity. While most versions of Sonic and Knuckles I had seen did have intense and deep connections to the chaos energy surrounding them, very few of them radiated their aura like these two did. Their auras rose to the surface, a frequent reminder that they carried with them a power not many in their world did. I have wondered at times if this new form also bore that strength, but hadn't known exactly how best to test it. Very few things made me angry these days. Most of the time I just observed, analyzed, and tried to learn as much about the people I lived with and the town we lived in as I could. I picked up on their language to where I can understand almost everything that I heard now. I was learning names and places. I could identify some of the various smells in the house and where they came from. Our mother had even been encouraging me to crawl to her a few days before, but surprisingly, I hadn't thought about my old powers in a long time. Could I still shift my body into other forms? Could I still travel through the shadows and send crystals rising from the ground around me? If I was meant to still be able to, was my new body still too underdeveloped to handle it? There was one thing I'd noticed about that morning. Despite clearly being in some distress and agitated when Sonic returned from his travels, he hadn't sent out a single pulse of chaos energy. To be honest, this aura when he first came in had felt drained. What was this about him taking out the powers? Had he really disabled the power to town before? I needed to know what happened, but I couldn't ask. This was what I'd been contemplating as I lay in my cradle and stared at the ceiling. And then I wasn't in my cradle anymore. I was in a dark, misty, incredibly familiar place. The accents. A place between this shadow and that shadow. A place between the shadows through which I could enter and exit at any of them. Anyway, I couldn't help but smile as I saw my own sparks, my purple color creep across my fur. I also came to notice that I didn't have any trouble moving on my own. No crawling or walking was needed. I could simply think and float to where I needed to go, and where I needed to go was back to the house. It took me a moment to sort through it, try to find the shadow within our home, but I found this by listening, focusing, until I found Knuckles' voice speaking. When I peeked through, I saw him, Tails, and Sonic all sitting on the couch. I pulled myself out and then reached up as they pounded their fists together. Sonic and Tails were shocked at my presence. Knuckles looked impressed. And personally, I was pretty impressed with myself too.